Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, thank you for your testimony. Director, the Washington Post reported last year that on March 22nd of 2017, you and the Director of National Intelligence Coates attended a briefing at the White House with officials from several government agencies. The article says, quote, as the briefing was wrapping up, Trump asked everyone to leave the room except for Coates and CIA Director Pompeo. The president then started complaining about the FBI investigation and Comey's handling of him, saying officials familiar with the accounts Coates gave to associates. 2 days earlier, Comey had confirmed in a congressional hearing that the Bureau was probing whether Trump's campaign coordinated with Russia during the 2016 race. After the encounter, Coates discussed the conversation with other officials and decided that intervening with Comey, as Trump had suggested, would be inappropriate, according to officials who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive internal matters. That's the end of the quote. So, Director, this account strongly suggests that the President asked you and Director Coates to interfere with then FBI Director Comey's investigations into the Trump campaign's contacts with Russia. What did President Trump say to you and Director Coates in that meeting?
Senator, I'm not going to talk about the conversations the President and I had. I think it's in this setting appropriate for a president to have an opportunity to talk with his senior leaders. I'll do that throughout the day, but I will tell you this. The article's suggestion that he asked me to do anything that was improper is false.
Did he ask you to do anything as it relates to that investigation?
Senator, I don't recall. I don't recall what he asked me that day precisely, but I have to tell you, I'm with the President an awful lot. He has never asked me to do anything that I considered remotely improper.
When you say you're not going to talk about that conversation, you're not asserting executive privilege, are you?
No, Senator. I believe, and I think you will agree, we'll talk about foreign policy issues. We'll talk about advice.
This has a connotation of foreign policy because this is about Russia. And so at the end of the day, understanding how you responded, what you will do as we're looking at mandatory sanctions that the administration has yet to impose, looking at how we're going to deal with a Russia that not only sought to affect our last elections, but is doing so even as we speak, both here at home and across the world. Those are substantive questions.
Yes,
and
Senator.
so it's not for me just simply a question of interest. It's a question of understanding what you were asked, how you responded, and what you did.
So you talked about the important policy issues. I'm happy to talk about this administration's work on Russia. I'm happy to talk about our work on sanctions if that's what you'd.
Let me ask you this.
If that's what's your question.
Did President Trump ever discuss the FBI or special counsel Russia's investigation with you?
Senator, again, I'm not going to talk about private conversations I've had with the President.
So whenever you come, if you were to be confirmed in the future and we're going to try to talk about foreign policy and we ask you where is the President at or this or that, you're not going to disclose any of the conversations.
Senator, I'm happy to answer questions about our administration's policies, the work that we're doing. You're asking about conversations. You should know, Senator, as well. I have provided, I spoke with Special Counsel Mueller, who interviewed me, requested an interview. I cooperated. Your colleagues on the Senate Intelligence Committee have asked for information from me and from the Central Intelligence Agency, as has the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. I think the leaders of those two organizations in a bipartisan way that would say I've been cooperative. And in matters related.
So you have spoken to Special Counsel Mueller?
Yes, that's correct.
And what was the subject of the conversation?
Senator, I'm not going to speak to that.
Did the Special Counsel tell you not to speak about these things?
Senator, I have cooperated with multiple investigations. While the investigation continues, I think that's the appropriate way to approach it. And you should know, and no one here today should take away any, because of the fact that I don't want to speak out, there should be no negative inferences with respect to anything, or for that matter, positive inferences about the fact that I think it's most appropriate that while these investigations continue, I not speak to the conversations I've had with the various investigative bodies.
I'm sure that if I asked Director Mueller, Special Counsel Mueller, a simple question, whether you were told you couldn't, I don't think he would say you couldn't. So it's your choice that you're not seeking to do so. And for me, these questions being answered truthfully in a forthcoming way are critically important because it goes to the very essence of how you approach one of the most critical issues that we have. And your unwillingness to speak to it is troubling to me. Let me ask you this. President Trump has repeatedly said that, quote, getting along with Russia is a good thing, unquote. Yesterday, he tweeted a quote, our relationship with Russia is worse now than it's ever been. There's no reason for this. and he indicated he would like to help Russia with its economy. What behavior, if any, has the Kremlin shown that indicates it wants to get along with the United States or our allies?
Senator, this administration has taken a series of actions to push back
That's not
against
my
Vladimir
question.
Putin.
Let's start with my question.
But, Senator,
my question
this
is,
is-
what behavior has the Kremlin shown that it indicates it wants to get along with the United States? Is there any? If so, please share it with me.
Senator, I take a backseat to no one with my views of the threat that is presented to America from Russia. And if I am confirmed as the Secretary of State, I can assure you this administration will continue, as it has for the past 15 months, to take real actions to push back, to reset the deterrence relationship with respect to Russia.
Well, let's talk about that, because I see that's in your written statement, and you suggest that there's a robust response to Russia. On February 27th, Admiral Mike Rogers, the head of the National Security Administration and U.S. Cyber Command, warned the Senate Armed Services Committee that the Trump administration has not done enough to stop the Russians. Quote, I believe that President Putin has clearly come to the conclusion that there's little price to pay here, and that therefore he can continue his activity. On April 3rd, the outgoing National Security Advisor, General H.R. McMaster, said, and I quote, we have failed to impose sufficient costs on Russia, and that the Kremlin's confidence is growing. And then, for your reference, here are a series of mandatory provisions under the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, part of which I helped write, which have not been implemented by the administration. Section 225, mandatory sanctions related to special Russian crude oil products. Section 226, mandatory sanctions with respect to Russia and other foreign financial institutions. Section 228, mandatory sanctions with respect to certain transactions with foreign sanctions evaders and serious human rights abuses in the Russian Federation. Section 231, mandatory sanctions with respect to persons engaging in transactions with the intelligence and defense sectors of the government of the Russian Federation. So there are more. That's not a robust response to Russia.